Chris Bedford here with Blaze News, sitting down with a friend of the show, Daniel Turner, on a group that he's uncovered, something he's figured out with his group, Power of the Future, that he founded and is executive director of. And this movement amongst the environmental left to secretly now influence judges and the decisions that are made. Daniel Turner, thank you for joining us.
Great to be here. Thank you.
So we all know that this is litigation and lawsuits is one of the number one weapons, one of the top weapons of the environmental left. You can't be president of the United States, so ostensibly the most powerful person in the world, and try to say okay to a pipeline, or Congress even, try to say okay to a pipeline, okay to this development, okay to this natural gas aspect, okay to this development of land without getting sued and without it being tied up and held up for years in court, sometimes until your term is over. And at that point, the Democrats just undo it. This group's existed for a while, Environmental Law Institute, but you, through FOIAs, and your group have discovered what they're up to. Tell us about this.
Yeah, and the left has always treasured the courts because despite all of their best efforts on climate change, hundreds of millions of dollars in propaganda, every kid's textbook is climate change, movies, Hollywood. They haven't moved the needle on climate change very much in 30, 40 years. The Americans just don't care about the issue.
They've almost moved on from it, it seems like.
Right now they have. They're moving, and this is for another show. Right now they're moving from climate to affordability because they realize that the climate issue just doesn't work. It doesn't resonate with the American people. But they're not going to go away anytime soon. But my point is that they've always needed the courts as a backup. When they don't get what they want, there's no appetite for legislation. No one on the Hill is brave enough to even sign the Green New Deal into law. They talk about it, they give speeches, but even Biden wasn't brave enough to declare a climate emergency, et cetera. But they use the courts to get their will done. And so this was an effort by this group called the Environmental Law Institute that came out of 2018. And when they lost West Virginia versus EPA, the climate left said, okay, we need to start getting to judges quicker. We can't wait to get to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court's not going to rule in our favor. So we need to get these thousands of lower court judges, start educating them in climate change hysteria. And that way, when we have lawsuits before them, and that's all they do is sue, right? Like you said, they sue nonstop. It's what they do. We have a friendly judge. So they started this very aggressive cultivation of judges. They bragged, they've scrubbed this from their website, but they bragged after this was all starting to get exposed. But they bragged that they had 3,000 judges go through this conference or go through these conferences that they hold nationally. And if you are being sued, you have a right to know who's been whispering in the judge's ear. The judge is supposed to be impartial. At least we have to pretend they're impartial. And clearly there's an effort to have judges not be impartial. And we sent this letter to AG Payambondi asking for an investigation into this deliberate attempt to bias the judiciary.
So judges, I know they have to do this with certified public accountants. You have to do this with attorneys. You have to do this with a whole host of different folks. They have to go back in for training. Continuing education, I think it's called, where they go to these seminars. How common are these seminars, and what gives this one a leg up on maybe some others?
The interesting thing here is that the people who run these seminars on environmental law and climate issues are the very ones who are also plaintiffs in the actual lawsuits. And if Power of the Future could do this, I would gladly host seminars for judges on energy law, land use law, right? There's a lot of law in the energy space that would be interesting. If you like just the legalese, the legal mindset, you'd be fascinated on a 3-day course. But if I got to bring in all of the different professors or teachers or roundtable discussion facilitators, et cetera, and then I was Power of the Future suing some green group or suing Gavin Newsom for stopping a pipeline from being built, and that judge had been in my course, don't you think Gavin Newsom would say, whoa, I don't want Judge Jones. Judge Jones just sat with you at the Four Seasons a month ago at your fancy cocktail 4-day course, right? That judge is not unbiased. My point isn't even, I'm not saying that this has to end. I'm saying it has to be transparent. And right now it is done in complete secrecy. They don't disclose who the course facilitators are. They don't disclose what judges participated, who's funding it, right? I mean, if you're flying thousands of judges to a conference, that money's coming from somewhere. Is George Soros funding this? I would like to know, because I guarantee you, if I was funding it, if the fossil fuel industry was funding it, Sheldon Whitehouse would be breathing so hard down my neck I wouldn't be able to sleep at night, because he'd want to know every one of my donors, all that we're doing. But the environmental left gets to do it and just pretend it's not happening. And that level of that lack of transparency is what's making the judiciary very compromised.
Yes, Democrats don't let, at least Supreme Court justices, get away, it seems like, with very much. Why?
Yeah.
Have you heard any feedback from Congress or the Department of Justice or any politicians or folks on the Hill or work for them that show an interest in, well, wait a second, maybe the Republican Party ought to take some interest in these sorts of judges and these sorts of, maybe not just even the judges, but find out who's going and learn a little bit more about what's actually being taught. Are they teaching simple hysteria? Are they teaching the methods of lawsuits? And how many of these judges end up hearing cases from people who are donors?
Well, one of the funny things is that through the Freedom of Information Act, we were able to receive just a tiny, tiny bit of information, because a lot of this is done on private emails and private organizations, and they're not open to Freedom of Information Act. But a couple people were sloppy. They used their official email addresses. One judge talks about educating the non-believers. Another judge in their correspondence says how happy he is to receive all this information because he's got
And who are they corresponding with?
members of the Environmental Legal Institute, ELI, people who facilitated the conferences.
Why does that get pulled up in FOIA?
Because the judges use their official email addresses, or in some cases it was even former Biden administration officials who were using government email addresses. And this is where the Freedom of Information Act and discovery can become sloppy, because you make one little tiny mistake and you email 3 other people, and then those emails get brought in. And part of the slow part of this type of investigation work is when you do a FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, the dump of documents is mind-boggling. It's tens of thousands of pages that you have to read through. This is why the left is so effective, because they have thousands and thousands of 23-year-old recent law grads who this is what they do all day, and they pour through all this information, and then they turn it into litigation, they turn it into scandal. The right, we're too busy working to have people, to do this type of work. But
it's kind of shocking how difficult it is to get a lot, especially donors on the right, especially MAGA donors. You'll get a lot of libertarian institutes that want to fund this sort of work, but you're not going to get conservatives very often who take an interest and understand what the left understands, which is fund journalism, fund investigations, fund these legal centers. Those make a big difference.
It does, and this is where the left is I am genuinely envious of their ability to organize and to raise money. And now they're terrible at it, in the sense that you look at their budgets and their success rate, you can't believe that they're so bad. I think they are incredibly wasteful. I'm sure there's a lot of grift. We've spoken before about the $2 billion that Stacey Abrams' organization got.
Still haven't seen what that's been spent on.
I mean, again, $2 billion, it was all sent to grift. Look at the BLM folks that received tens of millions of dollars. They bought mansions, and the rest is unaccountable, right? So they are terrible at managing money, which shouldn't surprise us. Look at the state of our country. But they are very good at getting their donors engaged. And maybe this is a cry out to the right. Daniel at powerthefuture.com. If I could find people who would fund this type of thing, I would gladly do this. And I will take the slings and arrows of the Sheldon Whitehouses and the AOCs who say, you had 5 judges attend your... I'd love to fly judges to Alaska and see the pipeline that they plan to build and the pipeline that currently exists. I'd love to bring judges to the Permian Basin. I'd love to bring journalists around the country to drilling rigs in the Gulf of America, right? I'd love to take people and see down in coal mines in West Virginia. But these things take money, and it takes an effort. But the left funds things generously. Now,
well, USAID is gone now.
I was just going to say that. Now, I'm curious to see how much of that dwindles off, because USAID is gone, and we saw the next day Politico couldn't make payroll, right? So I know a lot of their journalism and their philanthropy was taxpayer funded, but they still get people to write really large checks. And I wish the right could do the same, because we can be a lot more effective if I can demonstrate to journalists, to judges, to attorneys general, to everybody how important this industry is.
You know, there are organizations in the American right that suck up all the money. I mean, how many times have I been to a Koch conference that is filled with people who actually are conservative businessmen who think that that Charles Koch agrees with him and that the Charles Koch Institute agrees with them because I told that it's actually not going to that. But I was always shocked that Charles Koch was so much wealthier than George Soros, but had so much less impact. I mean, George Soros was changing the outcomes of attorney general elections. People like Soros were able to use their money, it seems like, more effectively. What are the Kochs doing? I don't even know. Hanging out with sports stars, doing recording studios, things like that. They claimed that they increased the Hispanic voter turnout with Libre, which is completely ridiculous.
Success always has 1,000 fathers, right? So everyone won the 2024 election. Everyone's making energy policy successful. Everyone got the Supreme Court justice nominees through. But the left is way more focused and more aggressive. The right, we have a lot of money, but boy, it seems to get wasted tremendously. And you're right, this is a prime example. And other organizations as well that they have these. How many galas have we both been to that you look around and you say, I get it, this is a fundraising event, but are we spending $500,000 at an event to raise $40,000? I don't understand where the money's going.
But it is essential to our democracy that I have another overcooked chicken meal at the National Building Museum. It's really just truly deeply important to me. How did you get tipped off to this sort of work? Or was this something that's just been going on for years and it was time to do the FOIAs and search for it?
There were a number of organizations have worked on this as well. I think what finally tipped us off was when we knew that there was FOIA-able information and we knew we could find some stuff. And my organization has spent a huge chunk of our budget on Freedom of Information Act the last 4 years. We knew the Biden left would be sloppy. We knew they would be...
They were so confident they'd be there forever.
And cocky, right? No qualms using their official email address to do unofficial work. And so we've only begun to scratch the surface of how much... There are FOIAs that we still can't get. Even with the Trump administration in power, for example, the John Kerry climate office at the State Department FOIA attorneys still will not turn over those documents. And we have sued and we've been in federal court and it's still, we'll get them to you one day. So
huge aspects of the Department of State are still waiting on Senate confirmation. I wonder how much that has to do with it.
You know how much bad stuff is going on if the law says you must turn over these documents and someone is still saying, don't turn them over. And there's no, how do you sue the government any more than this? And so, you kind of run out of options. But
what they should do is just keep liberals around in the Department of State in low-level jobs, and every 2 weeks or so, just randomly fire a bunch of them in the middle of the day, brutally. So, and then see who comes out, which of the career State Department employees come out to applaud them, and then put them on the list for the next time. And you know that you've actually finally fixed the Department of State when there's no longer any liberals applauding liberals for getting fired for being liberals. And that's when you know, oh, that was quiet.
Yeah.
It's like washing out a glass, getting the soap out. You got to keep going until there's no more soap. It's fine.
And state and all these other departments across the board, the folks working there are not our friends. And when it comes to my area, the Energy and Department of Energy, the Department of Interior, the EPA, of course, this is where these folks embed because they want to stop the administration from being successful, and they will use every mechanism necessary. And even the most low-level person at any agency has the power to gum up the work. Because if nothing else, just by, hey, Chris, can you bring that document too? And they just put it on a desk somewhere. Hey, I need you to get that email to blah, blah. Everyone has a little tiny, stamping function.
I've worked in private companies like that. It can be exhausting.
Yeah.
So I understand that Congress would be able to potentially hold hearings, ask questions, do investigate. But what would this be, an IRS thing, Department of Justice? What would you like to see from the administration? And how could this actually be at least exposed, if not stopped?
I think House and Senate Judiciary and House Oversight, I think they should demand transparency. That classes like this, the judges have to disclose that they take it. Again, have these conferences. I'm not saying you can't. I'm just saying if you sue my oil and gas company, I have a right to know if that judge was at your conference. And I have a right to know that that judge and the plaintiff are not buddies and texting separately. That just level. and I'll just ask for a change of venue.
Did they play golf together in Colorado Springs?
All that nonsense.
What are they doing?
Did their wife fly a flag that I consider to be racist? Remember poor Sam Alito's wife put up a flag that George Washington created, and everyone was like, where did she get the flag?
I love that it turned out that her flags were largely very personal middle finger messages to one neighbor.
Exactly.
And it was just a back and forth that her husband was almost completely unaware of. It seemed like, oh yeah, my wife is fighting with someone in the neighborhood.
I just want that level of complete transparency that I think all of our elected officials and our judiciary members, we have a right to know that, right? It's the same as our members of Congress. We have a right to know what stocks you've been selling in a skiff, right?
Would that be nice?
We have a right to know, certain donations, obviously FEC reports have to make it open, but certain don't have to get disclosed. And that's just all. We just want transparency.
Oh, and there's still a little follow-up. It's like whether you're Hunter Biden or members of Congress, they always say, I divested.
Yeah.
But you check and you're looking at documents, and it doesn't look like that's actually true over and over and over again.
No, Jennifer Granholm, when she was going through her hearing 5 years ago to be Secretary of Energy, said that she would divest from numerous green company stocks. She never confirmed whether or not she did. And she was asked multiple times in the Senate, and she would just not answer the question. And so how much money did she make with hundreds of millions of dollars? We're going to finance green buses. We're going to finance electric charging. How much money did these fools make? No one knows. And now we're at the point like, that was yesterday's news. We got to move on. Ukraine, Gaza, right? It's like, well, no. I want to know if these people enrich themselves with their power. That level of transparency and accountability. And when it comes to the judiciary, if I am getting sued by these green monsters, because that's all they do is sue people, I have a right to know that that judge is genuinely impartial. And if you tell me we're not going to tell you that answer, then we have bigger fish to fry.
Daniel Turner, where can people follow you online and follow your organization's work? Or, maybe there's a megadona out there who wants to do this. How can they reach you?
Well, they could reach you through you without a doubt, because you have all my contact info. But Daniel at powerofthefuture.com. Powerofthefuture.com is our website. And if someone's interested in helping us with this, I don't want, and I make this very clear, I don't want parity with the environmental left. I want them thoroughly defeated, because when they win, we get the last 4 years of exorbitant prices, rich Russia, rich Iran, crazy inflation, $5 gas, right? That's what happens when they win. I don't want them to win. I want them thoroughly defeated. And we have this rare window to defeat them right now with the House, the Senate, the White House, and the will of the American people that is sick and tired of the climate change lies. So please, God, help me defeat them. Help me defeat them.
Fantastic. And, I got to get you back on soon, because I want to talk to you about the governor's race in Virginia and the absolute lunatic who may be coming in there.
Yeah.
Daniel Turner with Power of the Future, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.